So I want to get right into it today and talk about deconstructing the face and looking at the separate parts of the face. So I'm going to share some of my favorite ways to do that, and one of my favorite ways is to use these. I've been doing this for years and it's really fun. I'm going to use some of my favorite things, which are these little flashcards that I make, and I make these with just magazine images. And if you don't get magazines, that's fine. You don't have to have these, but they are really helpful. So you can get used magazines from your local library, and all I do, I get them only because I like to mark them up and make with my students, and we do like the planes of the face, and we do all this kind of like little exploration where we're deconstructing things. We look at every part of the face in a different way. We look at the lips, we look at the eyes, we look at all this stuff. So all it looks like is you flip through a magazine and then you just take, now here's just an old Vogue. You can kind of see I've already gone through this one because the cover has had the eyes stolen off of it. But what I do is, here's a perfect example. I've stolen her mouth already, but then I would just go through here. This is a really old one. I don't even know when it's from. Oh, 2016, but we're still using it in the studio. So sometimes we do a black magic marker and we mark off the planes of the face. So this is like, we could steal her nose off of this, we could do her eye, but since we're gonna do the eye first, I'm just gonna take an eye, okay? And then we would just cut her eye and work from that. And then when we're done, we just paste it with a glue stick onto a little piece of cardstock. And then it goes into like a little, I use a Ziploc bag and we keep that. And then that's just like a, like a little thing to work from forever, okay? And it's just a close-up. And when we just mantle the face like this, it's not so overwhelming, okay? So what I like to do is, I'm just gonna show you how I do it. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to start with a circle, right? Because our eyeball is round, right? So even though we don't see the whole thing when we're looking, it's like an oval, and I'm gonna find the shape. And I'm not gonna stress out about whether or not it's perfect, okay? That's always important when you're drawing. Now, we have eyelids, we have an eyebrow. And so in this particular case, this lady has very almond-shaped eyes, and her eyelids kind of extend kind of far. So I'm just gonna look at that. And I'm just looking at shapes here. I'm just looking at the shape of her eye. So I'm gonna start to draw in the eyelid, okay? And then I'm gonna go for her lower lid here. Right? And then I'm gonna go above. Now this is the shape of her upper lid. Now this is the shape. I see that I'm looking at my picture below and I'm drawing that, which looks kind of like that. Now I'm looking at her eyebrow, which arches over the top like this. And we'll just leave that there for now because I want to really concentrate on her eye itself. So here we have her eye, we have her pupil. She has a beautiful highlight there, so I'm gonna add that in, and then I'm just going to it's almost like they come to life when we start to distinguish some of these shapes with a little darker value. So we always have this little, I don't know, I think this is what was left over from our third eye when we were when we were still animals. So I'm gonna just add a little bit of light shading on these lids, especially in those places, because this has a lot of light shading on it. So I'm going to do that, because those are usually a little darker. So I'm really going in there. But it's okay if you don't want to do any kind of detailing. That's all right too. So already it's starting to really look like an eye. Okay. Now, if you want, you can really see on this picture that you can see every one of her eyelashes. So I'm going to add some eyelashes on this bottom lid, and I'm going to just follow along with that. Now, I'm not thinking of this as a person. I'm kind of just going along with the program of the eye at this point. And I'm looking at her eyelashes, and I'm just drawing along. So now, if we want, we can, do a little bit with the eyebrow. I'm just gonna get a little of that detail in, and now I'm just gonna go in and I'm gonna do my pupil. And I saved that highlight. I drew around where I saw the highlight. And she has dark eyes, so and I noticed that her irises had a little bit of a darker edge. Okay, and then I'm gonna go in. I really want the pupil dark, so I'm going in with my drawing pencil, and now I'm just gonna do this part a little bit lighter, but she does have a dark eye. Now this crease usually is a little bit darker. And these are really fun to study, because then you're really getting into the darks and lights of the eye, and we're looking at the shadows there, and we can really play with that deconstructed eye. And now we're not worrying about the rest of the face at all. We're just kind of looking at these shadow places. We see the bridge of her nose and how the eye relates to that. And we can come in and really just concentrate on the eye itself and not have to worry about, the shape of my face isn't right. This is a really fun exercise, okay? So, and everyone's eye is shaped differently. So you can go ahead and do lots of different ones. And if you don't have magazines, that's fine. Just go out onto Google or Pinterest and ask for portrait photographs, and you'll get lots and lots of images of male faces, female faces, and that's what you want to do. You want to just practice drawing eyes. And what I've done is I've put together a step-by-step PDF, which I will link in the description box below, to all the steps.
Don't forget to try other media. Here I'm using a watercolor pencil and activating it with a brush. You could also try Neocolor 2 crayons or watercolor. It's really fun to add color into the project because it keeps you interested and focused. Plus, it's always fun to get in a little painting.
now we're going to talk about lips. All right, so everyone's lips are different. Lips have commonalities and they have huge differences visually. Okay, so sometimes when we look at lips, we go, oh my goodness, they're so different. And you know, some people have really plump lips and some people have very narrow lips, but they all have some things in common and samenesses about them, or things that we can find in common when we're looking at them and trying to learn about them. So the things that I want to share with you about drawing lips are the following things that we can take away that will work. Now, in the beginning, when we're first learning how to draw people, we're not trying to get a likeness. We are just trying to get something that looks human. And I always tell my students that once we learn the proportions, and you can refer back to the first video where we're just trying to get proportionate faces and learn a little bit about how to draw a face and get something that looks human and not necessarily a likeness. And I will link in the description box to that video. But what we're trying to do is just learn here to deconstruct and really learn about how to get a realistic looking lip. Okay, so I have a little trick that I want to share with you. So I'm just going to draw kind of the bottom of the nose here, okay? And then I want to talk about I always forget what this is called, but everybody has one. And it's at the bottom of our nose. And I should have probably looked that up. But we have this little place here, and that is always the top of our lip. Okay, so below that, our lip, even if we have very thin lips, there's always a little area of plumpness there. And we have an area of plumpness here. And then, you know, there's the line that separates our lips. And then you can go ahead and just kind of follow these lines when you're drawing a lip. Now, this is not looking, I'm not looking at any one of these pictures. I'm just showing you the basic principle of drawing a lip and where our plumpnesses go. And this is kind of the same thing as like when we're trying to learn to draw the face, we learn the proportions. When we're learning about lips, this is where the fleshy parts are. And so that's just a basic rules of the lips, just like we have rules of the face. So we have these two areas where there's more flesh, and then here we have an area that's more fleshy. Okay, and then here we have, this kind of follows the top lid, this kind of follows, and it always appears like our top lip goes a little farther. Okay, so now when we're looking at a specific set of lips, that's a different story. Now, again, we're not trying to beat ourselves up or anything. And you'll see when you have a picture in front of you, it's very hard to see on camera. I'm not sure if you can see, but we can see the little area above. And this lady's got almost like a heart shape here. And I'm gonna go ahead and put in her little round places. She's got a very fleshy part here, and I'm going to kind of look at, she's got a little bit of a crooked smile here, and her lip turns up a little bit. So I'm going to just follow along with the natural shape of her lip, which is turned up at the edge. She has a very plump kind of lower lip, very full and plump. And she's got a nice little shadow here that I'm gonna put in. And that will add to the shape of the lip that I'm putting in. And you want to watch or really look when you're doing these. You want to really take your time, which I'm not doing here because I'm making a video. But she also has on these fleshier parts a little bit of a lighter color. Now, obviously the darkest value is where her mouth opens, and I'm getting that in. But then her lips in general are a little bit of a darker color. And you'll see that, like, start looking at paintings and photographs, you'll see that the lips are very rarely one color. There are a lot of, there's different values. And sometimes your upper lip will be a little bit darker than your lower lip. It really depends on, how the light is hitting it in either the photograph or your light source is coming from. And so try to draw a bunch of different sets of lips and see what you come up with. Try lots of different shaped lips. This lady has, right where this line, right in the middle, she has kind of like a little raised bump there. And her lips are very plump in the middle, where this lady doesn't have as much of that plumpness. This woman also has really plump cushions, where we see these three cushions, boom, boom, boom. And you could even see the highlights on them. And the same with this lady. You could really see where the light is hitting those.
These are the things that you really want to pay attention to, observe, and really watch when you're drawing the lips. And just stay curious.
Talk about the nose next. So obviously everyone has a different shaped nose. Very masculine noses. Everyone's nose is a different shape, and just like everything else, there are commonalities or differences in how we draw them and how we attempt to draw them. But again, we're not trying to get a likeness yet. So I'm just going to show you the basic way we find a universal nose, okay? So I want you to first look at this largest one, and we're going to talk about how connected it is to the eye. Okay, so we can see the eyebrow here, and just how connected the nose and the eyebrow is, and how the eye itself drops into that eye socket, okay, right next to it. So it's very, very connected, interconnected with the eye socket. Your cheekbone is here, and that whole area works together. Okay, it's so close here. Everything is interconnected, the eyebrow. And if you even run your finger up along here on your own face, you can feel that. And that's like an integral part of how everything's connected. Okay, so we're gonna just start by drawing a nose, just a basic universal nose. I'm not looking at any of these. So now I'm just gonna come down. I'm gonna just draw a universal nose. I'm gonna make it a little bit fuller at the bottom. And the first thing we're gonna talk about is that fleshy part of the nose at the bottom. So even if we're not drawing this circle every time we draw a face, we want to know that this shape is here because this sticks out. We're drawing a two-dimensional thing, but we want it to look three-dimensional. And then on the sides of the nose, we have these nostrils. So we want to think about a little round shape here and a little round shape here. And then we come around. We do a little dip around. Now you don't have to draw this, you just want to feel it, okay? You have to know that those things are there. And everyone's a little bit of a different shape. There's always a little bit of a shadow here. And this is interconnected to your eyebrow, okay? That's where your eyebrow sits. And then this comes down here, and this is going to be the top of your lip, okay? And that's how that's all interconnected. So then when we're looking, everyone's nose is different. This woman has a very round tip of the nose, but the tiniest of nostrils. This person's nose, you know, her nose is it's not as round, but then her nostrils are bigger. Okay, so everyone's nose is a different shape. This person has a very straight nose. Her nostrils are a little larger, but the tip of her nose is pretty much the same all the way down. I mean, it's not a big protruding tip of the nose. And her nostrils are very nicely shaped, but they're not too round. So everyone's looks different. And this person, I'm sure you can't really see this one too good because it's really small, but this is a very masculine, thick nose. So everyone has something slightly different. You will very rarely find two noses alike, but the commonalities are that we do have a very round, fleshy part at the tip and the two on the sides. So that's what we're going for. And I think I'll just do this one. And we've been drawing the straight on views, but my PDFs are going to include the side views and the 3/4 views as well. So those will be in the link to the PDF will be in the description box below, and you can download those for free if it helps you. You can also make these, you know, just with Google Images or Pinterest images if you don't have magazines. All right, so now I'm going to do a larger one of these and two smaller round shapes because she does have a very round nose. Now how I would do this is I would just kind of start blending it into the sides because it's always a graceful curve, okay, into the side. And then I'm gonna sneak around. She has kind of a little bit of a dip there, and around and up. She's got actually kind of a thick nose. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to do this because I didn't make her nose quite thick enough. Okay. So, and then usually there's some shading on the sides a little bit more than on the front of the nose. usually underneath a little bit in these places. Okay. So take your time while you're doing these too. You really want to look and see. And I think that deconstructing these little parts and doing them individually really does help. Now, if you want to take this all the way up and see how it relates to your eyebrows, like your eyebrow would start about here, you can do that as you become more comfortable with
In the next clip, I'm just using a little bit of the Neocolor 2 water-soluble crayon, and I'm drawing and activating it with the brush and a little bit of water. Then I draw back into it. And then I kind of got up into the eyebrow area and a little bit around the eye sockets, just so that I could play with some of those darker shadows. I really encourage you to experiment with some of the other materials that you might have around, because it really does help if you could find the ones you like best. The most important thing is that you enjoy the process.